Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Amy.
Our project is called Mind, Body, and Soul, the Nature of Well-Being, and this podcast is just one small piece of the overall project. We are making a documentary that follows our hike on the Continental Divide Trail that will explore how spending time in nature affects a person's mental, physical, and spiritual well-being.
We are guinea pigs in a sense because we will be documenting our own experiences and recording changes that we find. Along the way, we are interviewing people about their experiences in nature to see how they have been affected.
Much of the benefits that come from being in nature are subjective, and therefore hard to measure in a quantifiable way. That's why we have turned to recording stories as a way to distribute this knowledge. Since the beginning of human culture, we have compressed valuable information into stories, and that's how we have shared wisdom throughout the generations.
We hope that the stories we gathered during this project will help spread some of the wisdom that can be found in the wilderness. Episode 3, an interview with Annie Nelson about her hike on the North Country Trail. The wilderness had already helped Annie Nelson overcome issues with substance abuse and depression. After that, she was drawn to the wilderness more and more, which eventually led to her plan to hike half of the North Country Trail. The NCT is the longest national scenic trail in the country at 4,600 miles long. She had never taken on anything even remotely this long before, but she knew it was necessary for her well-being to try. She filmed her journey, and her videos can be found on her YouTube channel called Wild Stories.
My name is Annie Nelson.
Where are we right now?
Well, it's Dakota Lands, originally, the 7 council fires, and now known as Afton State Park, and we're in the St. Croix River Valley in eastern Minnesota.
This is where you live?
Close by. Yeah, I live in the Twin Cities in St. Paul, Minnesota, so we're about half an hour east of there.
So what do you do for a living now?
Right now I work in social services and public assistance for a county, so I help people. One of the amazing things I got to do in 2020 was distribute $360,000 to people who were at risk of eviction or utility disconnection because of COVID-19. So I helped people who had almost died from COVID, month in the hospital on a ventilator, come home, not able to work because their lungs are so damaged, and make sure those folks didn't end up homeless. So that's what I do right now.
That's cool. That sounds like really fulfilling work.
It is, yeah. And now I'm training in on a new position there, so.
How did you discover your interest in nature? Was it a lifelong thing, or was it kind of later in life?
I got to it later in life. For me, when I was growing up as a kid, the outdoors were recreation. It was something that we did on vacation. So I think probably my first really potent memory as a kid was our week-long camping trip on the North Shore in Minnesota. That was the trip I learned how to build a fire and, climbed up a rock cliff that felt huge, and when I went back as an adult I realized it was about 10 feet tall. And then I was when I was about 28, 29, something like that, my cousins took me into the Boundary Waters on a canoe trip for the first time. I'd never been, and it was like a revelation. It was an amazing experience, and I completely fell head over heels in love, and then a lot of my friends in the cities weren't into camping, so I started just going on solo trips, and that led me into backpacking, and then I've basically spent the last 5 years of my life doing crazier and crazier things.
So you think that Boundary Waters trip was kind of like the catalyst?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think the benefits of spending time in nature are?
The benefits of spending time in nature range from the smallest pleasures to I would say basically spiritual awakenings for myself anyway. Anything from just the joy of finding a bunch of blueberries somewhere and how good they are, to feeling like honestly, I felt like before I got into the kind of long-term, long-distance outdoor stuff I've been doing, I was completely unaware of about half of my body, and also just mind and soul. Like, there's something that woke up in me when I started doing those trips, this ancient knowledge that I'd been totally disconnected from in the way that I'd grown up and the way I was living my life, which was an indoor life. And that ancient knowledge, it just gifted me this like profound connection to where we live in this planet, and a whole new understanding of why we are the way we are and why our bodies work the way they work. And yeah.
You touched on a whole bunch of things there that I wanted to go deeper into.
Yeah.
Why do blueberries taste better in nature?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's their natural habitat. It's almost like that's the thing you kind of learn is that when you and things are growing and spending time where they have spent, eons evolving, there seems to be a kind of magic there. And so the blueberries that you find that are growing in the burns in the full sunshine in Minnesota summer, they're better than what you buy at the store. They're so much better. So
you said that you kind of like, what did you say? You discovered more of your body out there, or how it works. Can you talk about that some more?
Well, the first thing that blows your mind, I think, when you start doing outdoor trips that involve more than packing up your car and driving somewhere, is that what I discovered is that my body is capable of way more than I understood. I mean, before I started doing these trips, the idea of walking 3 miles to a store was ridiculous, and to the point where I didn't even consider it something that I could do, despite being an athlete, despite being outdoors all the time when I was a kid. It just what? The idea that I could walk 23 miles in a day with 30 pounds of gear on my back and do that over and over and over for 5 months, that's what wakes up. You realize this is why I walk on 2 feet, because this is how we used to make a living. I'm absolutely built to do this day after day. So it's just I was just completely blown away by what my body could do, and it's completely changed everything for me, of everything I understand about myself and what I'm capable of and what life can offer me and the kind of adventures I can have. It's pretty revolutionary.
So what would you say your relationship with your body was before, let's say, doing the NCT, and after? How did that change?
Oh gosh, my relationship with my body was heavily influenced by American culture, in the sense that I thought of my body more in the terms of how it looks. I don't know if this is a body thing. I guess it kind of is, but how I looked and how I felt mentally, those were my obsessions. And since doing these long trips, I just love my body with a ferocity that I did not have before. I kind of hated my body before. I'm kind of a thick girl, and I had a lot of shame about that from a very young age, and now I just love it. Because what I know is that is my strength and my power, my athleticism. That's where that lives. So I just can't. I'm never gonna hate my super strong legs ever again. They've carried me 2,000 miles. I don't care that I carry a little bit of extra weight on my belly. Now that is just that's my survival belly. I've got 500 miles of ultralight calories right there, So, and another thing that I noticed is that my mental fortitude is pretty insane now. I think when I started out getting really into the outdoors, I had this expectation that I was going to be happy all the time. And I learned very quickly that that's not what happens. That's not what happens. But at the same time, you're like, what is happening is, even on days when I was struggling physically or mentally and kind of miserable, I was still like, I just felt totally different than how I feel at home, because I was using all of my skills. You know, you use your mind, your body, your smarts. You know, you like really have to be thinking out there in a way that you don't have to be thinking every day when you're just going to the grocery store, kind of judging like, you know, is the situation survivable all the time? And that just kind of it heightens your awareness and your presence in the current moment, and your awareness of your surroundings in this way that's intoxicating, like even when you're kind of struggling a little bit. So now I just think that like, it's not that I haven't had like days in this pandemic when things have been hard, but I do feel like I have coped with it pretty well. And I feel like that's what the outdoor has gifted me, is kind of this toughness. Yeah.
I like that word, mental fortitude. It's like I've kind of learned to just be okay with suffering.
Yeah, like I stopped expecting it to, like, I stopped living with the delusion that suffering isn't a part of life, a natural part of life, right? And it's not that I want to suffer, and I'm not gonna lie, I actively do everything I can to avoid suffering still. But when I can't avoid it, and it's just happening, I feel like there's just a part of me that's a little bit better prepared for that now. Yeah.
Yeah, like I used to think there was something wrong with me if I was suffering.
Yeah.
If I was in a bad mood or something. Now I just kind of accept that it's just kind of a part of the process.
It's just part of life. And it's not necessarily even a bad part. It's just like, it's just what's happening right now. And it is going to change. It's going to get better. And, you know, all you can do is just keep moving, right? That's a pretty powerful lesson. And I wish I could say that, like, I've carried all of these woods lessons out into life perfectly. No, I still catch myself all the time, like, fretting about, this is my life now. Like, this, what is going to happen? Or if something that I want to be happening isn't happening, sometimes I'll still spin out about it. But I just don't do it as long as I used to. It's like the woods has kind of programmed this stop measure in my head, where it's just like, hey, quit being silly. Just go outside and look at a bird or something. You'll be fine.
That's the lesson we all need to take away from this. Go outside and look at a bird.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
They're really funny. Just go watch them for a while.
Would you say that there's something in nature that you can't find in your like regular life?
I mean, I don't want to say it's all or nothing, because I feel like, honestly, I feel like sometimes what the wood does is just help me get myself out of my own way. It's like, because I don't have the constant distractions offered by modern life of my smartphone and my computer and, you know, calling my friends and watching TV or, you know, listening to podcasts or reading a book or something like that. Like, I feel like when I'm in the city, even when I kind of don't want to be, it's like really hard for me to stop this energy where I'm just like, I'm just like moving. You just gotta go, 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 go. Like, that's the vibe of modern living, right? You gotta be, da, da, da. And in the woods, there's just, I don't have that option. I'm just out there. And so it forces me to just relax. And so what I can find in the woods really easily is basically peace and serenity, like total peace and serenity. And I think there are ways that you can find that in regular life for sure, but it's just way harder for me personally. I just am way better at it in the woods than I am in real life. And, or as other hikers have called it, synthetic life. I like that better than real life versus trail life. But But I do think that the thing that I'm still convinced, and people keep trying to like disagree with me on this, and I finally just had to like give myself permission this year to be like, you know what, I'm sorry, but I have had this experience and you have not, which is living in the woods for months at a time, and how that makes me feel and how connected to life and, you know, every creature on this planet, from the trees to the earthworms to the weather. I mean, weather's not a creature, but you know what I mean? Like just everything that occupies this planet, not just humans. I just feel this level of connection with it that there's like too much noise in at least the city where I live. I just can't feel the same kind of connection with the world around me. It's just too, I don't know. I feel like there's a wall between me and that, what I feel in the woods.
Absolutely. That's actually a kind of a big focus of this project, is to try and break down that wall for people, or at least help them figure out how to get out there and make those connections with the natural world, and understand that, yeah, these cities and the civilized life that we've made has disconnected us from that. And just kind of help us see that we're all a part of this system and we're not like outside of it. Because that's what it does with all the noise in the cities and stuff. It makes us feel like we're separate from the natural system.
Yeah,
and had all kinds of side effects.
And and because of the time I've spent out there, I've started to understand more and more what a huge loss that is. Like, yes, there are positives to living in really dense societies. You know, there's no getting around the fact that like where I live right now, there are 10 hospitals. If I have a major health event, like a fatal level health event, my chances of surviving that are much greater at my house in the city, right, than in the Trap Hills and the upper peninsula of Michigan. But I almost feel like there's this belief that's grown up. You know, it's like, to me, I see cities are a natural evolution of humans continuously trying to improve that safety level in our lives. You know, we live in these houses that are much better at standing up to crazy storms than you are when you're just like camped out in a tent in the woods, for sure. That's a huge improvement, you know? But then there seems to then alongside that has grown up this belief that anything that isn't like modern living is super dangerous and unsafe. And what you said, that separation, like it's like we're not part of the natural system anymore. We've removed ourselves from it. And that's just not true, first of all. But I also think that removal, we've lost something super important, which is a love affair with where we live and how it just is on its own, not how we've shaped it to be.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the positive aspects of civilization too, because I don't want to make it seem like it's all bad and that we need to go live in the woods. Like, definitely want to find a way to kind of merge these two things back together.
Yeah, and I think I think honestly the best way to do it is to have one experience in your life where you just go out in nature and release that control, put yourself at the mercy of nature, and figure out how to live inside of the rules of nature instead of outside of the rules of nature. And what you find in there is, when I tell like kids, when I'm talking to kids about backpacking, it's magical, man. It's like the closest thing I've experienced in my life I've had to going to Hogwarts. I'm not even gonna lie, like that's what it feels like. You're just like, whoa, this is magic. So.
And it gets more magical the more time you spend in it. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the more time I spend in society and understand civilization and stuff, the less mystery there is. But it works the opposite way with nature.
Yeah, it gets more mysterious the more time you spend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's That's good to hear, because, yeah, I don't ever want that to stop. I don't ever want that to stop. And it just calls to you after you've experienced it. It just calls to you all the time. And I think that it's like, and then what I'm saying is, if you can give yourself one long experience where you get out and you really feel what Alex and I are talking about, then it makes reconnecting to it later much easier. Because you know how to, like, it's almost like your soul gets tuned into this frequency. Wow, I sound like a real hippie now. I am, let's not lie. But I don't know, you just, yeah, so it's like that balance, right? Like, I can't go and hike all the time as much as I would want to. And I seriously considered, like, playing the lottery, which I never do because you don't win. But, you know, part of me was like, hey, yeah, it could happen. But if I did, then I could hike all the time, you know. But yeah.
So I guess, speaking of sounding like a hippie, do you consider yourself a spiritual person, or, like, how do you think about that kind of stuff? Are you religious?
I was raised by lapsed Catholics. And we were kind of raised with, like, the permission to go out, and we were not raised within a church, but we were like, you know, if at some point you want to do that, you can. So I think I'm definitely spiritual, and I finally have, like, just started to own in my own mind the fact that as an outdoor person specifically, I am a spiritual. That is the fundamental reason why I go out and do this, is because it's a spiritual experience for me. So yeah, I think that that's something that, especially over the last, like, 8-9 years, has been something I've been kind of mindfully pursuing, is a more spiritual practicing a spirituality. So, and that really kicked off for me because when I was 30, I got sober. I was an alcoholic all of my 20s. And actually that trip to the Boundary Waters helped me get sober, because it was the first time in, like, 5 years that I didn't drink for 5 days. And it, like, cleared my head enough for me to, like, get a taste of what I had been missing out on for so long. And specifically that connection when I was talking about, like, just the sheer, how, like, the beauty got me higher than any drug or alcohol ever could. And it wasn't like an icky high, like drugs and alcohol. They just always have such an icky, that you can feel them costing you something. Like, sure, the pleasure is quick and fast, you know, but it is eating away at you the whole time too. So, and that's not what, nature's never doing that. Like, it's this natural high, and it's just building you up the whole time. So I was like, oof, I gotta change something right now. So I got sober and really focused on that for a couple of years. And then as part of that, I work a program, and that's where I really got introduced to kind of spirituality in the beginning. And then my kind of exploration of the woods and outdoor activities was growing up alongside of that. So they've now woven together in this really beautiful way for me. So I just can't, when I talk about, like, feeling a connection when I'm out in the woods, it's absolutely spiritual. I talk to God in the woods for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what does that mean to you? Like, what is the human spirit? How do you visualize that?
I've given up needing to know or have a definition. It's more of a feeling for me. And it's definitely like this, it's just this kind of vast, golden, feeling inside. And in the woods too. Like the woods, it just feels like it's just coursing through it all the time. Like when you're walking through the woods, even when I'm like surrounded by 200 mosquitoes, There's still like this I just feel this singing, you know? And so I don't, you know, I just think that we're all kind of, I definitely believe in the interconnectedness of it. I feel like there's something, like I'm really bashful about talking about this stuff because I know it's gonna, I'm bashful about it because I don't think I do it justice. But like, I'm just gonna, okay, I'll just go ahead and say it. Be vulnerable, right? I can feel the trees now. Like and I don't know how, it's really hard to describe it until, and I don't think that people will necessarily have the same experience as me out there. And who knows, maybe it's just, I'm just making it all up in my head. But it just feels really real to me. Like I can feel that they have something happening inside of them too. And it's not necessarily what's happening in us, but it's like this, yeah, still that golden force in the world. Like I think of it as life force, like the thing that makes life happen. And I think one of the powerful experiences I had recently was, you see way more death out in the woods than you do in modern life. That's another thing that's very different. Like death is everywhere. You're constantly finding, you know, winter wolf kills deer. And I remember standing over this skeleton that was totally bleached, totally clean. It was just bones and hide left. And it's such a juxtaposition because here are like the totally clean bones, but then the hide looks like you could pet it. Like it just looks like a live deer, you know, it's barely degraded. And so here's this kind of violent scene. Like, you know that this deer probably died hard. It's torn apart. And it's jolting for me because I'm not used to seeing death like that. And at the same time as standing over this carcass and this kind of violent thing, the woods is just vibrating around you with life. You know, there are birds and snakes and the trees are rustling, and you can feel, like when you spend that much time in the woods continuously, you really can feel everything growing around you because you see it changing every day. So it's just like, and so all of that is happening at the same time I'm standing over this dead creature, and it's like nature telling me, yep, death happens, violence happens, but life goes on. And that was just like really beautiful for me. So that's the kind of experiences I have as this, you know, kind of spiritually, I think, out there. And that's why I go out there.
That's powerful stuff. It's a good way of talking about it or thinking about it too. Does having an experience like that, does that change the way that you think about your own life and your own mortality and the way that you think about your own death?
I don't know. Because I think until I'm actually dying, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that anytime anything dies, it's terrifying, you know. But I think what it has done is helped me live with like two ideas in my head at the same time, which is like, okay, so I'm really lucky and I'm on this planet and I'm in this body and I'm this person right now. And of course, I'm very invested in that person's existence and what happens to me. But at the same time, it's a really comforting idea that I'm not the center of the universe. And that life is going to go on beyond me. It is going on outside of me. And that's one thing that's, yeah, absolutely. I think I was very human-centric before I started out doing outdoor activities. And now I'm just like, I think that everything that is alive on this planet has an equal right to be here. And we should be very careful and mindful of how we harvest. Everything harvests. Like that's another natural part of life, right? I mean, animals harvest, plants harvest. It's just part of the system. But I think for me, I try to do it in a way that's like the least amount of impact I can have. I try now. I'm not necessarily that good at it all the time. I still use plastic.
Yeah.
Especially backpacking. I haven't figured that out yet.
It's kind of part of living in this society. It's really, really hard to not have those impacts. Like, you have to be extremely mindful.
Yeah.
It's to the point where it kind of like disrupts your daily life if you don't take part in some of that stuff.
But one thing that like like a long-term outdoor experience does, though, is strip away all of those things that in our culture we're constantly being sold, and it creates this idea of like what you need in life that is it turns out, for myself anyway, what I've learned is I do not I do not need about 90% of what is being sold to me on a daily basis. So that's kind of the balance I've struck with, that is that, you know, I don't own a lot of clothing. I own the clothing I use. And I'm very careful before I buy new clothing, because I'm just like, do you really need this, or you just think you need it, you know? And I think a lot of people are having that impulse now. It's not necessarily just woods, but it's like, basically when I started hiking, I got rid of about 90% of what I owned, and I have not missed any of it. None of it. In fact, and it's a huge freedom, because, you know, I basically know exactly what I need, and it all fits in a backpack. Like, that's my baseline. Anything above that now is just kind of like luxury. And I like luxuries, don't get me wrong. I mean, everybody does, but I just have a lot less of them than I used to.
Yeah, you become comfortable with only what you need. And I found like a lot of what I need comes from within me now instead of outside stuff. Like, it's kind of what you were talking about, like, we're always being sold these things, like, you need this thing to be happy, you need this job to be happy, you need this relationship to be fulfilled, or whatever. And I kind of learned to, like, find all that stuff within myself, and then I didn't need to, like, chase all of that external stuff as much anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you find some of that stuff within yourself, then all those external things just start to come to you. It's been a really awesome process.
I'm so excited.
Seeing that happening.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to hear that.
When I think of like why I want to convince people to have more nature in their lives, there's kind of two reasons. And the first reason is to heal. If somebody has trauma or any sort of psychological damage or spiritual damage or even physical damage, like, nature is a good place to heal. And the second reason is for people who are kind of already doing okay, but maybe they're feeling a little bit lost in life. Like, they don't really have a sense of purpose, their job is kind of meaningless, and like they're just going through the motions.
Bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, nature is like a good place to kind of figure out like who you are and what your purpose is, and I guess just like what makes you fulfilled. But going back to the first part about healing, and you said that being in nature was kind of the catalyst for you to get over being an alcoholic. Are you comfortable with talking about that a little more?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what the cause of that was? Like, why did you start drinking so much?
Oh, well, I'm definitely of the school that I think that addiction is an illness. I think I had a physical, I think it's a physical condition in my body that's triggered by using chemicals for me. So I just don't respond to them the same way that people without an addictive composition in their body do. So, but yeah, I mean, I had some rough experiences when I was a kid, and I started using drugs pretty early. And I think that part of that was feeling drawn to other kids who were, because we kind of were a little bit, we kind of dealt with stuff more. And I don't know. So yeah, so a lot of people are self-medicating, right, with substances out there. So, and I was kind of drawn to the kids who were probably at that age because we had things in common. But yeah, sorry, did I answer your question? I feel like I'm starting to ramble.
No, that's good.
Okay.
So that's what led you to it.
I think it was a combination. It's like, being traumatized isn't going to make you an addict, but like you do, I think it is an illness too. So I just happen to have both of those things going on. So yeah.
So what did the drugs and alcohol do for you?
They allowed me to completely control how I felt at all times. So if I had any kind of distress, or I was unhappy or bored, or I was happy but I wanted to be happier, right? I mean, come on. Getting drunk is fun. Okay? It's just a good time. And unfortunately, when you're an alcoholic or an addict, it stops being a good time and starts being a compulsion. And so I lost my train of thought again. Sorry.
Maybe you could walk me through the process of, like, from that first Boundary Waters trip to being sober. Like, how did that process happen in your mind?
I think actually the way that the nature played the biggest role initially in me getting sober was it revealed to me just how the most serious symptoms I had with my addiction was severe depression and anxiety. Which I, of course, was not aware of. Like, I thought everything outside of me needed to be fixed and that I would be fine, even though I was, drinking every day. Like, I hadn't connected that dot yet. And, or I hadn't admitted that I needed to do anything about that. Like, I was kind of one of those folks who kind of understood I was an alcoholic, but I was still going to work. I was still functioning. So, like, who cares? This is what brings me joy. But it wasn't. And that was the big lie that was happening. So 2 things happened. One was that Boundary Waters trip where I didn't drink for 5 days and felt so much better, and just completely that constant craving you feel as an addict for just to feel better or to feel happy. Like, you just have this constant craving for that. It just went away because I was so saturated with beauty and the power of being in the wilderness and that peace and quiet, and it brought me back to myself. So, but I didn't get sober right away. I went back to drinking for a while, but then I had a second experience where I was walking my dog into this incredible sunset. I mean, like, intellectually, I could see that it was an amazing sunset, and I couldn't feel any of it. I felt no joy. It didn't. You just heard me talking about how nature makes my soul sing, okay? Like, that's my jam. And I felt nothing. And I knew then that something was, like, really wrong with me. Because my whole life, that had been my reaction to that, right? So that was, and I think it was maybe a month later that I finally went to treatment. And then it was just basically, like, because I was sober and stable, and not spending all of my money and time drinking, then I got to start exploring, and it really makes me wonder, like, what I would have accomplished if I hadn't developed an addiction, and what I would have done in my 20s. If I hadn't spent my 20s drinking, in college, I did spend a lot of time in the outdoors. I had a boyfriend who was really into the outdoors, and we went camping like every weekend, but it was always camping and drinking, or camping and, it was always camping and partying. And, so it makes me wonder now, but so it was like, finally, I kind of like, I got the addiction out of the way, and I was able to follow that life-affirming connection I felt in nature out of my dark period. So
you think the drinking made you go numb, basically? Is that kind of what you're saying with the sunset, and you didn't feel anything?
Yeah, I've got this whole theory about drugs and alcohol, which is they trick you. So every drug, it's whatever it appears to be promising you in the beginning, it's opposite game, because that's what it will ultimately take from you. Like, for me, drinking was, I drank because it made me happy, right? And what did drinking ultimately do to me? It made me miserable, okay? I went through 4 different psychologists. The last one broke up with me, like literally fired me, because she was like, I cannot help you until you stop drinking, And God bless her for being honest with me, So, I turned to the bottle because it made me feel good, but ultimately it made me feel like there was, the worst you can feel. So there's a reason why alcoholics commit suicide sometimes. Yeah.
I think one thing that hiking and nature did for me is that it shifted the way that I think about things. So like, I think what drugs and alcohol do is that they make you feel good in the short term and they make you feel bad in the long term. And that's what like a lot of society is selling us right now. It's like, buy these things, you'll feel good.
Forever.
And yeah.
Yes. But they're short term.
Yeah, it makes you feel good in the short term and then you're broke in the long term or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started realizing that if I want to feel good long term, then it's okay to feel bad short term.
Yeah.
So like I can suffer for a little bit, but it's going to make me feel good in the long term.
You know, and I probably just jumped right over that now because for me, like, the suffering has gotten to the point where I like enjoy it a little bit. I don't know how to describe that. It's not, okay, I do think pretty much every backpacker is a bit of a masochist. But there's this kind of like, I think actually it's an endorphin high. So the minute I start working really hard physically, I'm already being rewarded for it. So yeah, you get to a point where like, but in the beginning it's miserable. I think like my very first day of backpacking, I thought I was going to die. And I was like, what am I doing out here? You know? So
I had the exact same thought on my first day of the PNT.
What am I doing? Yeah, you will have that thought many times if you do go down this path. You'll find yourself kind of waking up to like, I might die in 5 minutes. What am I doing? But then it works out usually. I'm not dead yet. No, and actually those moments are very, very rare. And half the time they're happening, I'm like, I don't know if this is just me being dramatic or if this is actually dangerous. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That outdoor or backpacking or canoe, whatever, teaches you that suffering now pays off huge in the long run.
Yeah, I think my first day on the PNT, it was more like I felt stupid for thinking that I could do this. Like I'm 2 hours into this and my whole body hurts and I'm miserable and I can't climb this mountain. Like, why did I think that I could do this?
Yes. I feel like you have to start there. Because then everything that comes after it is a success and you're just like, I'm so good at this. I'm actually not that good at it still, but compared to where I started.
Put up with the suffering and keep going and then you're good at it.
That's literally, yes, that's like, that's the metric. And that's what I meant, like, that's what when we were talking about before, that it's like, it's not, I actually don't, I've stopped caring so much about failing too, because I fail a lot in the woods. There are days when I'm just like, everything I do, I've failed today. Like I'm failing at how far I'm hiking. I failed because I fell off that rock. I failed because I left my water filter. Actually, that never happened, but anyway.
My friend Marathon did that. I think he hiked 4 miles before he realized he left his water filter. And he went back for it.
You got to go back for that. Yeah. You got to. I've had Giardia. Go back. Go back. Okay.
I guess I haven't had it, so I don't know what it is.
Go back. Do not want it.
You touched on a good point about failing and being okay with failing. Like, do you find that are you less hard on yourself now, or are you more accepting of not reaching your goals or something like that?
I am still actively in the process of untraining myself from being ridiculously hard on myself. It's something I've gotten much better at in the woods, because the woods teaches you really fast that it's not a productive way to be. It doesn't change anything. Being hard on yourself when you are suffering just makes the suffering worse. It doesn't alleviate it. So I've gotten better at it in the woods. In my regular life, I'm trying to get that into it. But I mean, man, 30 years before I started doing this stuff, that's a lot of habit to unlearn. So I still fall into it sometimes, but and I think the trap that I get into is that I get this idea of where I want. This is a dynamic, and it's the dynamic in the woods, and it's a dynamic in my life now, where I have an expectation of how I think things should be going, how I think my life should be going, what I want from my life, what I want from my hike, how far I want to go that day. And when I don't achieve that, it's basically an opportunity to hate myself. I don't really hate myself, but to like be hard on myself. So, and I think what this and recovery too has started to teach me more of is just to like, I don't have to hate myself in that moment. I can just be like, oops, yeah, failure is a part of life. I failed today. Okay, I'll give it another shot tomorrow. So, and that's what definitely my hike on the North Country Trail was basically that for 5 months. I don't know if there was actually the days when I actually met the goal I had set for that day was rare. So I think overall that hike has actually given me permission to just be, that hike was a question of myself. I was asking myself a question like, am I this kind of hiker who can do what Alex does, which is amazing feats of physical strength and endurance. And there are a lot of people out hiking who can do that kind of stuff. And my last hike, I asked myself the question and I got my answer, which is no. Because that's not what motivates me personally out there. And I'm totally cool with that. Like, I'm thrilled by that now that I've answered that question for myself. So my next, if I get to have another big experience like that, like I'll have more information, I'll get to make good choices and hopefully set expectations that don't give me the opportunity to choose to hate myself instead of just being in the moment, and just having a good time. So.
That's something that I've actually been trying to tell my girlfriend, because she sets really high standards for herself, and it's part of the reason why I love her. Like, she's got really high standards about how things should go, and she holds herself to a high standard, and she works really hard and everything. But then when things don't go that way, she's like really, really hard on herself. Mm-hmm. And I think the hike's going to help her learn to accept that.
Oh, is she coming with you?
Yeah.
For the whole thing?
Yep.
Oh my God, I'm so excited for her. Is it her first experience? Oh, what's her name?
Amy.
Oh my God. And you're gonna have a great time. Alex will, yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know that behavior pattern very well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And long distance hiking has absolutely taught me to stop doing that, or encouraged me to stop doing it. I try. Yeah.
But it doesn't get rid of your desire to have high standards. Like, you still want to try.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry. And I don't know if I was communicating that well. It's kind of like, yeah, the only thing that it's taught me to do, absolutely, still have high standards and still want to accomplish great things and have many, many dreams that I'm actively working toward every day. It's just that when I fail to like magically get there yesterday, I don't get mad at myself about it anymore. I just keep making steady progress, doing the next right thing, trying to do the next right thing on days when I don't have energy to do anything. Like, that's okay. I don't beat myself up about it anymore. So, and it's kind of like what you said earlier, is like, if you just kind of show up, then that stuff starts to happen. Or, like stuff that you did not see coming that turns out to be way better than what you thought you wanted, which is absolutely what long distance hiking is for me. I did not see that coming. I mean, I had those experiences around getting sober that helped reveal to me that I was not okay. But I didn't, if you had asked me, a year into being sober, if I would be off hiking 2,000 miles through the woods, I'd be like, are you insane? Like, I did not see that coming at all. So.
Okay, one more question before we get to the NCT.
Yeah.
How do you think society views nature in general? What do people think it's good for? Like, what's the point of nature in the terms of like American society?
I think the most common view is it's something to be consumed. But I definitely think there's a lot of folks out there too who view it as, similarly to we do, that it's a refuge and a place to go have fun and connect with everything that we've talked about today. That spirit of life. So I think it's a real I don't know if it's balanced, but both exist in our culture.
All right, so what made you first, how'd you get the idea to hike part of the NCT?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of tripped and fell over myself into backpacking in general, and then the NCT as well. So like, you know, my cousins took me to the BWCA. I was desperate to get that feeling back. Gee, that doesn't make me sound like I'm addicted to nature or anything, does it? Maybe.
All of them are bad.
Not all of them are bad. Yeah, that's right. So I was just like trying to improve my skills. So I was going up to the edge of the Boundary Waters to camp at a car campground to just like I just wanted to get close to it, right? And on the way up there, I accidentally found the Superior Hiking Trail, which is a 300-mile stretch of the North Country Trail. So then I was like, oh, okay, well maybe I'll try that. And so then my next trip, I went out, actually backpacked for the first time, like tried to do it right. That was the trip I thought I was gonna die on. And then ended up 4 days later on the shore of Lake Superior with my dog falling asleep. And me like, I am the baddest ass person in the world, right? I felt so empowered after that trip. I was in love with everything in myself. So, and so then I thru hiked that trail shortly after that. I did the whole thing in one stretch. And then I was just looking kind of for my next, like, I think for me, I was really I was underestimating my abilities. So I always was like choosing like less than I can actually do. And so the North Country Trail was me finally admitting to myself that I was capable of doing something like a thru hike on the Appalachian Trail, like 2,000 miles-ish.
Explain what the North Country Trail is, how long it is, and like what your goal was.
Yep. So the North Country Trail runs from Vermont to North Dakota. It's America's longest national scenic trail. There are 11 national scenic trails in America. The most famous are the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail. But the North Country Trail is the longest, and it runs through my favorite woods, the North Woods, which are really special and overlooked, I think, as a biome. They straddle this, what's called the Laurentian Divide area, which creates like a super diverse ecosystem and really unique. And then also the section I hiked, I specifically chose because it ran along the Great Lakes for 1,000 miles, which are incredible. And also have this, they're so big that they create their own weather systems, which impact the forest around them. And there's a very specific feel to a Lake Superior forest and that I love. So so I decided to try. So I wanted a long distance experience like the Appalachian Trail, but I don't know, maybe I'd like the AT. It just seems very crowded to me right now because I think hiking is getting really popular. Great. Thru hike is getting really popular. But that's not why I go out there. I don't go out there to party or meet a bunch of people. I go out there to have like a one-on-one connection with nature. So, and so it was like the North Country Trail definitely offered that. And it was in my home territory that I love.
How long is the trail?
4,600 miles.
And what was your goal?
Oh, thank you. Sorry. So my goal was to hike the equivalent. So my original goal was to hike half of the trail, which is, I set 2,400 miles was my original goal.
What happened? Just walk me through the whole hike, I guess.
Okay. What happened was I started in March in Lower Peninsula, Michigan, with the intention to walk back to North Dakota by late October, I think was my goal. And did great in Lower Peninsula, Michigan. Got into the Upper Peninsula, which is, if you start planning a hike, you'll learn that people will warn you and warn you and warn you and warn you about the UP being pretty rugged and remote which it turned out absolutely to be on the western side. The eastern side's very fun and pretty easy hiking still. So, but yeah, so I got into some trouble in the western side. I was basically like on a green cloud, as I think of it, until about mile 800. And that was right when I hit the trap hills. And so one part of outdoor activities is that you're extending your boundaries, like your safety boundaries, and there are practical parts of managing your body and that level of extreme physical activity that I just did not know how to do before I started this. And unfortunately, sometimes I have to learn things the hard way because I don't recognize what is happening until I'm already kind of at a danger point. So that's what happened in the trap hills, is I was probably borderline heat exhausted, and I started to get sick. Like it felt, anyway. So I had to go off trail for a while because I didn't know what was happening, honestly. I went home for a few days to kind of recover, and then I got back on trail, headed through Wisconsin, blew through Wisconsin, hit Minnesota, hiked up the Spirit Hiking Trail, was doing pretty great, and then hit the Boundary Waters. That was the other part about this trail. It's amazing. 100 miles through the Boundary Waters wilderness, like unparalleled, okay, for Midwestern hiking, I think. Right as I hit the boundary, well, actually I got about halfway down that, and then I got Giardia. So, and I have no idea how I got it. I really don't. I was doing all the right things, watering or filtering my water and everything like that. So, so now the thing was, though, that I was already way behind schedule. There was no way I was making it to North Dakota at that point already, because it was kind of hilarious. I set off on this hike having never hiked more than 14 miles in a single day before, and somehow I thought I was going to be doing 25 miles a day consistently forever. I don't know. That did not happen. So, but that's okay. It was totally fine. I had an amazing time. I had a blast, and I'm really mad I got Giardia, because I think I probably would have hit 2,000. I think I would have gotten there, but I ended up getting 1,500. So,
can you kind of walk me through the process of coming to peace with not hiking 25 miles a day? Because just like watching your video when you're talking about it, you seem to have like ups and downs. Sometimes you'd be okay with it, sometimes you'd be really hard on yourself, and then you'd be like, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, that's true. I forced Alex to watch that. Yeah. No, and it was like, I think actually, I probably knew actually at mile 800 that I wasn't going to make it, but I couldn't admit it to myself, because there's kind of this, when you're out there physically pushing yourself past your limits on a daily basis, a couple interesting things happen. One is you kind of need that goal to be motivating you so that you continue to push yourself past your physical boundaries. And then also, as you are doing that, you discover that you totally can push yourself and be fine, right? So I got into a place where like I actually couldn't admit for a while that I wasn't going to be able to push past that physical boundary, because I'd actually done it successfully so many times already, on that trip even, right? I had learned, set totally new limit. I had explored totally new physical limits for myself successfully, but I could not get over that hump, and I just couldn't quite give up on it for a while. So I think it wasn't until I was actually, that was mile 800, and I think it wasn't until actually I put Alex through 500 more miles of that discussion before I finally was just like, F it, I'm doing 15 miles a day, okay? That's what's happening. And it's fine. And then I don't think I even did that some days.
Was it like kind of freeing or liberating to just accept that now I'm only doing 15 and I don't have to like feel bad about not trying to get 25 or something?
You put it perfectly. I went back and forth about it all the time. So it's hard, you invest money, time, you take this huge risk, and like, again, this is something that I thought a lot about. It's just like, we have this kind of accomplishment culture, and I wanted the badge, man. I set the goal, and I want want to accomplish this. And so I think I really wrestled with that. But that's kind of where, like, I still get caught up in that, where it's like, that's not, I mean, I think people who set those goals for themselves and accomplish them, I think I really respect them and admire them. So I wanted to be one of those people. But when it turned out that the goals I had set for myself were not realistic, based on lots of evidence every day, right? Yeah, I wish I had come to accept that earlier, because I feel like I was so focused on that I kind of missed out on just having a good time. So I don't know why I wrestled with that so much. Do you know? You watched it. You probably know better than me.
I would wrestle with it. That'd be really, really hard for me to give up on that goal.
Okay. Yeah, it is hard to give up on it.
I'm not sure why exactly, but it's kind of like what you said. Like, you've invested so much into this, and to not do it, you feel like a failure, or you feel like you have let yourself down or something. But you said it earlier that that's not really the reason why you're out there, and I think, did you discover that along the way, that you were out there for other reasons other than accomplishing this goal?
This is like one of those dumb things where it's like, I knew this, but apparently I forgot it, right? Or like I had to relearn it. Yeah, I think, I mean, I knew that I enjoyed slow hiking before I went out there. I'd already established that. So I think what this trip for me was like, okay, do I enjoy this type of hiking? Like extreme, what I consider extreme, and what that demands. I was curious if there was a lesson, like if there was a different type of connection with this planet, with that spiritual connection, in doing that kind of trip, you know? And because it's an unknown. It was an unknown frontier. I was exploring myself, my body, what it could do, how that was going to make me feel, how that was going to make me feel in the environment. If there was something new to learn there, you know? And I think for some people there is. And that's why I asked my question that, because there are some people who talk about it in a way that made me want to try it, because they do find something out there doing that style of trip. But just what I learned was that I don't. So I maybe I'm lucky, because I only have to hike 12 to 15 miles a day and I still get it.
It's less work that way.
It's less work. Lots more lollygagging around in camp drinking coffee. Yeah.
I've actually kind of realized that about myself recently, like since I moved to Montana. Up until then, I've been very like mission oriented. Like if I go on a hike, I want to get to this spot, and it's usually kind of far away and it's like hard to get to. And lately I've been doing more hikes where I don't have a mission, and I just kind of go out there to like see what's out there.
Yeah.
And I enjoy those.
Yeah. And just kind of let your curiosity and your body lead you around. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where there's no rush, and I just like go to whatever looks nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and you still have to strike a balance, you know, unfortunately, in those long trips, because you can only physically carry so much food. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's definitely now I know for sure. So I've already thought about this. You know, it's like if I get to because my hope is I do get to finish the North Country Trail in my lifetime, whether that be, you know, in week trips now, if I'm back in the workaday world, which is great. I'm so grateful to have a job. But if I do hope I get to do another long adventure someday, and how I will approach that this time. And that's definitely being informed by this dynamic that you're touching on, of setting these super high goals and then like beating myself up for it when I don't reach it. So I probably won't do that next time. I don't think I'll even say I'm hiking X amount of miles. I'm not even going to do it. I'm just going to be like, I'm starting on this day, and then I'm hiking for as long as I want to, or as long as I can afford to. And then however far I get in that time is how far I get. Like, I'm not going to.
That's freedom right there.
Right? Sounds super good.
Yep.
Yeah.
This one's for Amy. I think I remember from your series that you talked a little bit about food that you used to not be able to eat and then you could eat on the trail. Is that something that happened?
I don't know if you want me to talk about food, because actually I think backpacking has kind of ruined me. I used to be a pretty healthy eater, and now I'm like, I just can't turn it off. Nutella, I cannot quit you. But, well, this is kind of going back to the body image stuff, though, you know, that, like, instead of thinking about my body and how it looks, now I just care about, like, is my body healthy, and am I taking pretty good care of it, and what it can do for me, right? And food is very similar in that backpacking totally changed my outlook on food and my understanding of how it interacts with my body. So I think an idea that really resonated with me was like the French hate the way Americans talk about food because we talk about food like it's medicine. And that's not what food is to the French. Food is an experience, right? It is a sensual experience meant to be enjoyed, you know? And instead we're always trying to eat in a way that like magically programs us to feel better or go faster or be stronger or whatever, right? There's this kind of like, there's even a competition in how we eat. And so backpacking totally changed how I eat because it like gave me permission to actually eat fat, right? Which I'd been like taught to avoid as a woman, especially a chubby woman. Like I'm not allowed to have fat. And, you know, now I know that that's not a healthy way to backpack for sure anyway. I try not to eat a ton of it when I'm sedentary, but not like on trail. But on trail, like if I don't have fat, like I'm basically dying. So yeah.
Yeah, you need that stuff. Like
fat and salt. We do not. Yeah, you can't eat salt in sedentary life. But on trail, if you do not have salt, like you literally will die. And that is one of my other scariest experiences I've had on trail I was overhydrating and I did not have enough electrolytes and salt. And there's a condition you can get called hyponatremia. Like we're all very educated about dehydration, but hyponatremia is basically the opposite. And it's just as dangerous. So yeah, so I started eating a lot more salt after that.
Yeah, salt tastes so good. On the trail too.
Well, and it's crazy because you're like, you think salt is a dehydrating thing, but it's not. It holds the water in your body. If you don't have enough salt in your body, the water just passes right through you. So when you really get backpacking, you actually can tell that you don't have enough salt because you're peeing too much. Like you're just like, whoa, what is happening? Where are my peanuts? You know, like it becomes natural.
Let's talk about after the trail.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like coming back after the trail? Like coming back into normal society? Was that difficult?
Bizarre. Yeah. Yeah, you kind of are like, you're going through some stuff, but you can't really talk about it because what you just went through is honestly just like a huge like privilege. So to then have this like really hard time coming off of it is, I don't know. I just didn't feel very comfortable talking about that with very many people. And I also didn't understand what was happening very well. And the phrase that people use for it a lot of times is trail depression, post-trail depression. And it just didn't feel right, right? Having had actual experienced actual depression before, I'm like, this isn't depression. That's not what it is. But somebody talked about it, I think that on Backpacker Radio, it's in this blog called The Trek, and she's also a long distance hiker, and she's also a PhD candidate. I think she's neuroscience or something like that. And her theory is it's grief, and that feels closer to me because, you know, I think there's that stage of grief where like you can't actually think about it too much because it's too painful. Like you miss it too much, you know. And that was what it felt like. It's like you're in love with somebody. So in love with them, and it's not even that they break up with you, it's just for some reason you can't be together anymore. Like when your hike ends, it's not like the woods are like, get out, you know. Like there's no breakup, right? The woods still love you, they want you to come back, you know, but you can't because you have to be back in real life and like earn money and feed yourself, so and like return to reality. So it's this real struggle. And then there's all the things that you and I are talking about today. I feel like I still feel like really awkward when I really talk about them, even though like I know them deep down in my soul, right? I don't know why I'm so afraid of what people are going to think about me sharing things I've learned with a lot of hard work, okay? And trying to incorporate those into your life, bring that stuff over. it's actually like, that's something I'm actively working toward every day, still trying to figure that out. You know, it's like, that's where I'm still talking about, like, I still struggle with, like, I have this idea of this expectation of what I want to be happening in my life. What I want to be happening in my life is that balance that you and I are talking about between modern life and having more of a connection, having that connection in my life on a daily basis. I have not figured it out yet. Man, I've been trying ever since I got back. So my whole idea was like, okay, I'll move closer to the woods because then I can go out in them more easily. But I think I got too rigid, man, in my thinking. So I don't know. And then the pandemic happened. that really messed things up. So yeah, I don't know. I still feel like I'm kind of after, and I haven't figured it out.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to like dive because it's different for everybody. Like everybody's life is different. Your life circumstances are different. Like what you can do for a job are different. So it's very personal about having to figure out like how to incorporate that. Yep. And because you're gonna want to, you're gonna feel driven to. And I don't know if I worry a little bit that I'm kind of a cautionary tale though, because there's lots of stories out there of people who are like, yeah, I quit my job and then I got back and then I found a job and no big deal, you know. I think a lot of those people are very young. So I was mid-career and like people were like, you're crazy. What are you doing? Why are you quitting your job that you had for 7 years? And it's like, I don't know, because I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and I want to do this, right? So I did it, but like it was a hard reentry for me. It took me a long time to find another job that was paying me a similar wage. It was not where I wanted to be. You know, so I'm not going to lie to you. Like, you may go out and do this amazing thing. You will never regret it. As hard as it may be on the flip side, I have never regretted it a single second, but it has not been easy. That was going to be my question. Is it worth it?
Yes. Oh yeah. I honestly think that this is, I will say this, if you are someone who enjoys the woods, I really think that this is one of the most amazing gifts that you can give to yourself in your entire life, okay? It's on par with getting married, having children, going to college. Like, it's that level of life experience. It's insanely powerful. Yeah.
Do you think that type of experience is for everybody?
No, and that's okay. No, that's okay. I really, and I you'll know if it is because you'll just start feeling drawn to spend more and more time in the woods. And then before you know it, you'll be like, I can do this, you know, that's how you know. So, my mom will never sleep in a tent ever. And I love her, and that is okay. I don't think that she's missing out or having a you know, or like, I don't feel like I'm not trying to convince her like, no, you got to go do this, right? Because she knows herself and she knows what fulfills her, right? But I think that for those of us who enjoy the woods, getting stuck and thinking of it as just like a vacation spot is really robbing yourself of the full experience. It's only like, that's like 10% of what's out here. There's so much more.
Yeah, I agree that you'll know, like, when I was thinking about doing my first through hike, it just like, once the idea was there, it just consumed me. It was like all my energy went into making that happen.
And that's why I think it's not for everyone. I don't want to suggest to anyone out there who doesn't feel like doing this that's not okay. That's absolutely okay, because you have to have that level of focus and intensity to be successful in something like this, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dangerous if you don't. You need to be totally committed.
You need to be committed. You need to be committed because it's really hard some days. It's really scary sometimes. But those times are so few compared to the rest of it, which is like awesome. So, yeah.
I think that's it for my questions.
Cool.
Anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think your questions were perfect, and that's exactly what I would have wanted to talk about. So, yeah.